This content is for informational and educational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained here constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments whatsoever by Draper Gorin Blockchain, aka DGB, the presenter, or other associated parties for the content being provided. Please do your own due diligence and seek proper counsel.
Boom. Welcome to another week. It's you know what's funny is I love that song. That song in the intro is a band called Out of Trust from Oxnard, California. It's a nardcore band if you're into local punk rock scenes. But I was thinking, maybe it's time we switch it up, because when we originally were planning this show, like now we're show number 84, right? We thought we were going to do it like opposite of Blockchain and Booze back in the day. That was like the evening show. And I thought, okay, we'll do it first thing in the morning. And I'm cool with doing it like 8 a.m. my time, so that it's okay time on the East Coast. But I thought we needed a song to wake us up and get us energized. Now that we're doing it at 10 a.m. and it's like 1 p.m. East Coast, I don't know if we really need that aggressive of an intro, but I'm still excited. It gets me pumped every time. And I'm extra excited because we got Rodney on today. Rodney,
hey,
welcome.
Hey, it's good to see you, Alon.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a bunch of people pop into the stream. So I'll do some homework so that we kill another moment of time before we get into the intros and everything. And this will be actually extra important because in the next week or two, one of the things we're going to talk about on the stream is going to be live on our website too, not just on the live stream. So I'll show you. So if you are joining for the first time, you're watching the stream not live, go to dgb.vc or follow us on all the platforms, and you'll be notified when we go live. You'll be on our newsletter, and especially if you're an early stage startup in the fintech space, in the blockchain space, go there, hit us up. We are crazy early. It's never too early to get in touch with us. So if you think you want to raise money from venture capitalists or investors and you're going, I just need to do this one thing to get ready, don't. Contact us. We want to be first. We want to meet you before you think you're ready, so that we can help. That's our sweet spot. That's our stage. And also, if you're an investor wanting to get into the space, reach out. All right, I've given people enough time. Rodney, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you.
Great to see you too. I've got some stories with Rodney. I'm sure we'll segue into, or I'll get excited and jump in. But first, before I get the chance to ADD us in the wrong direction, Rodney, give us a little bit of background, the high level stuff for everyone.
Absolutely. So I've been in the tech startup and venture ecosystem a little over 26 years, so it's been a minute. Different companies, different brands, pivoting from the operating side to the investment side, to the ecosystem building side. It's been quite a journey, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, because that includes meeting people like you along the way.
Yeah, I think that it's it's the most fun place to be in if you're really into it. And there's certain people from the beginning are just very, very into it. And you can tell sometimes, like the way I met Nate at a local university, right? There's a guy named Mike Panesis. Rodney, you've met him. When we met that one time by accident in Santa Barbara, when you were out at a Y Combinator thing, it was
that's right.
One of those Brad Feld,
like a startup ecosystem. Yeah.
So Mike was there. Mike
one of those.
One of the. Well, that was a funny thing. Is one day I think I saw on Facebook or something you posted like in Santa Barbara for the day, And I texted you. I was like, "What are you doing in Santa Barbara?" And you're like, "I'm hanging out with Kyle Ashby, this guy that does ecosystem stuff in Santa Barbara." And I'm like, "I'm driving up because Santa Barbara for me is like 45-minute drive." And I drove up and just joined you guys, and I saw you. It was like the greatest one of those moments, because every time I talk to Rodney, he's on the East Coast or in Atlanta or doing one of the OHub things. So it was really awesome to have that moment. But regardless, where I was getting at is Mike Panesis is the local ecosystem guy for my area. He used to be in Santa Barbara. Then he went to CLU, the university that Nate went to, and I met him there. And it's similar in a way to the stage of the I want to say kids, but I get in trouble for calling people kids. The kids that are at OHub, right? The folks that are at OHub. And they're not always age-wise kids, but we're all kids at that stage, right? Like when you have an idea and you want to develop your own personal brand, your own startup. And Rodney is one of those diehards that he loves it, because he keeps jumping into that mode, right? Helping people get started. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts. But
yeah, I think we're 600. We were doing a count a couple of months ago. We're 600 startups, that we've helped to, pre-accelerate, incubate, whatever, word choice and we, we now teach. I guess we've been doing this for a while. We teach, the science of high growth company building, right? There's 1,000 unknowns that you just got to know to get the go, right? And I'm not talking about product. I'm not talking about team. I'm talking about so much that goes into operating a successful company, that you can teach that stuff, right?
Yeah.
You can't teach grit, but
I think you can't teach that grit and that drive. I just spoke to somebody, I think it was yesterday, and I was talking about how the last real job I had at a corporate company, where I sat in a cubicle and I was doing my thing, and then I quit to start my last company, to start Invested In, the company that I met you when I was doing. And I explained to them how, when I quit that job, everybody was coming to me going, "Oh man, did you hate that job?" And I went, "No." They're like, "Oh, you must have had a boss that was an ass or something." "No." "You must have been making bad money." "Nope." And they're like, "Then why would you quit working?" Because I worked at IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, which is owned by Amazon. So that's cool. Amazon was still cool back then. I think it's still cool, but some, there's, depending on certain situations, you might not think they're that cool, but whatever. At that moment, over about 13, 14 years ago, still cool. And everybody's asking, and if you have it in you, it doesn't matter how great your job is, do something else. You're sitting there going, "I can't sit in this cubicle." It doesn't matter if your boss is your best friend, doesn't matter if you love every one of your coworkers, you need to do something, right? And you can't teach that grit, that determination, that drive. But you can, if you listen and pay attention to people with experience, you can leapfrog your way into success, I think. And that's something, tell people a little bit. I also, drive on that a little bit, but also we just said OHub a bunch of times. We didn't even explain what OHub or Opportunity Hub is, and that's important.
Absolutely. There are a couple of brands that, consume my day. One being Opportunity Hub, or OHub as we affectionately call it. I'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll, talk about Piksel Technology Corporation. And, if you go back 26 years, before I started my first startup, I had two, I'll call them small side businesses, side hustles. I was in college, I was in grad school, but, I think that entrepreneurial spirit, was just, in my soul and my DNA, like literally in my DNA. And having a wife that came from a family of entrepreneurs, and I came from a family of entrepreneurs. There was just a built-in support structure that allowed me to take the type of risk to go out and like solve some problem to figure out if anyone's willing to pay for it. And you're selling it before it's fully built.
Yeah.
And then there's partner dynamics, and there's fundraising challenges, and customer attrition, and hosting. So it's so much that just goes into that. And so Multicast was my first company. That was acquired in 2010, and in 2013 my wife and we started Opportunity Hub, and the thesis was simple. There wasn't a lot of folks that looked like us that had raised venture capital and built companies that eventually were acquired. And, we did not suffer from the disease and the schism of onlyism. And so we did not want to just be the only ones. And so we worked tirelessly over the last 12 years to literally help thousands of people find their way into the tech startup and venture ecosystem. And so, today OHub is part, startup accelerator, workforce development, and, venture capital. And so you wrap all of those things up. We've learned a lot over the last 12 years. We've gone from physical spaces to online spaces. We have the OHub app now. You can download it, right? It's a cool place to connect or what have you. And so, we have a goal to really scale and accelerate the number of people that we're connecting together online. But we're also, and this is where the intersectionality with Piksel comes in, all of the content, that we've had at our, top events over the decade. We've just got hundreds upon hundreds of hours of content with people with like Mark Cuban, like you. Matter of fact.
Oh, I'll tell you the story. Yeah.
Tell them the story.
So okay. So well, quickly and we should, talk about Piksel too. I guess we're only 15 minutes in. We got time, but I want to stack it, and then we keep telling stories. But Rodney, I'll tell a story to lead into the story, because I think it's important to talk about grit and determination and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Rodney, when I met him, was on one end of the spectrum in the crowdfunding space. So he's very passionate about crowdfunding, because I think that all of us who believed in crowdfunding believed that it not only could level the playing field because of geographic locations and things like that, but it could level the playing field in the way the internet idealistically should level the playing field, where I don't have to be a Stanford graduate in Silicon Valley to raise money for my startup, right? Or I don't have to be necessarily a certain gender or a certain color or a certain race or a certain whatever, whether it's inherent or not, or not inherent, whether the bias is on purpose or not. Shit wasn't fair back then. It still isn't, but the internet had the potential to make it better. Crowdfunding had the potential to make it better. Now, there were people in the crowdfunding industry. We all believed in that, right? Like, that's what the diehard.
That's what really screws up the democratization of anything, of the people. The policy, the policy is like ideal. It's like the American dream, right? It's ideal. It's like the Constitution,
Remember,
the Bill of Rights. It's all ideal, except that part about we being 3/5 of a human, and there's still slavery through the prison system. Those things should come out of the Constitution.
Remember when I was at one of our conferences on stage and I talked about my parents not being American, or
That's right.
they are as American as can get. They came to this country to make a better life for me and my brothers. And we were all born here, and they came here and they worked in the kitchen and they did whatever they had to do to make happen. And I said something about, like, this is the American dream. Like, we talked about the American dream, and Rodney corrected me. I remember one of the conferences, he's like, that's your American dream. Right? I grew up in a different situation, right? And it's true. And we all have these different connections. And where I'm getting at with all of this stuff is that Rodney believed, and he was right, that through lobbying and through working with people in Congress and working with the government, that he could change the rules and laws of the way crowdfunding, the way people raised money on the internet, and securities laws, right? And I remember going to Rodney and a lot of our other friends who believed in that and going, guys, I love you. There's no way in hell we're going to get these politicians to get on our side. There's no way in hell we're going to do anything. And then some genius, somewhere between Rodney and probably like David Wield and those guys, somebody rebranded the crowdfunding rules and laws to the Jobs Act at the time.
Yeah.
And if you remember,
Jason and Woody, it was a small crew of people, because you got to think about it. This was a very polarizing political climate.
Yeah.
First, Black elected president. Boehner was the Speaker of the House. Republicans had the House and the Senate. Obama had the White House, and and I don't even think the Democrats had the courts at the time. Yeah. But Obama's people worked with Boehner's people to rebrand it to the Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act.
Jobs.
The Jobs Act,
And this is soon after the financial crisis. People like me, a few years younger than Rodney, I have all of my friends. If you think about this moment in time, for every couple of friends, like every two groups of couples in my friends group, there was one job, right? Jobs were, people, especially fresh out of college, people were screwed. Like, it really was a bad time. I remember I had friends who were married couples sharing apartments because of the economy, right?
Yeah.
So
pretty bad.
It was a bad time. So if you just think about this, now Rodney and a bunch of people put together a really great framework to make it legal to raise money on the internet. They changed some of the rules and laws. It's not perfect, but it's way better than what we had, right? And then they branded it the Jobs Act. Now, what politician could go up for re-election in their next term? And this is my cynical part. This is the part that my cynical part, and why I'm who I am. But I go, what politician could vote against the Jobs Act? Not a single one of my friends would be okay with voting for someone who voted against jobs. Right.
Well, we need another Jobs Act, because it seems like we got Nate. It seems like we got an anti-Jobs Act right now.
Right.
And firing the person at labor to give the statistics doesn't fix it.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw something.
To keep it real.
Oh, I saw something that was really funny. Funny the other day, somebody posted, I hope I don't totally screw it up, but somebody's like, I went to the dentist, he told me I've got a root canal, so I fired my I've got to get a root canal, so I fired my dentist and I hired the CEO of Tooth Decay to be my new dentist. He told me that old woke dentist is an idiot,
right?
So
can you imagine driving asleep, or coding asleep? You can't even vibe code while you sleep. I mean, you got to be woke about some things. And
the whole polarization is
weaponization of the dictionary is just
oh yeah
if it's in the dictionary, it's weaponized.
That's right.
Well,
so where I was going at about Rodney is that there were people amongst the techies building for this crowdfunding space who thought we have to build to circumvent this rigged system, right? So the biggest financial institutions in the world, in our opinions, right, we're paying for all of those Republicans and all of the Democrats who are in power to get there. And the biggest financial institutions in the world didn't really want this because it does front run them. It does create an opportunity for people to compete with them. And so that's how we believed. But Rodney and some others were willing to slam their head against the wall for years and years till they made it happen. And they made it happen for all of us. Regardless if you were a cynical person like me who didn't think it could happen, I got those rules that Rodney fought for too. So I like to respect the people who did the hard work that I wasn't willing to do to get us to that place. And what? Yeah. You know,
well, you know, here's a little, I appreciate that. And here's a little history. And so, you know, the work that, you know, Woody and Jason did to get Patrick McHenry, and then, you know, David Will came along, you know, and they, you know, brilliant people. But, you know, Patrick McHenry was a part of this, you know, this new Tea Party, right? And they were just kind of disrupting Congress in, you know, their own way. So they weren't getting much buy-in from Democratic lawmakers. And so I was keynoting, there's this association of the remaining Black-owned banks here in the country. I think it's the National Bankers Association. I was keynoting there, and the Reverend Jesse Jackson was there, and Reverend Jackson introduced me to Congresswoman Maxine Waters. And so, you know, she's California, I can't remember the district, but she's a, you know, iconic California congresswoman, right? And so I was talking to her, and she says, well, let me stop you a little bit because, you know, my husband owns a bank. And I was at the Bankers Association, and I was saying, this is how I framed it. I said, so if a company doesn't have revenue, they can't service the debt, and you can't lend to them. And you really make money as a bank when you lend. You don't make that much money with assets under, you know, management, your depository assets. You go borrow money from the federal government and you loan against that. But you have a framework by which you loan capital. So if I don't, you know, have any revenue to service the debt, now this is like the regular structure. I'm not talking about like the good old boy structure where you just go in and get a signature loan, right? You know,
you flip, and the banks are flipping those reserves times 1,000. But
absolutely. So when I made the case that this is your pipeline for future, like for instance, if I go out and raise money using equity crowdfunding or any type of alternative investment, you know, private alternative investment, I've got to house it in a fiduciary institution, which is a bank. And so this bill will actually grow your assets under management. And she was like, that makes total sense to me. Why wouldn't we do it? And I said, yeah, why wouldn't you do it? And so, you know, it was sort of like the Tea Party and the Coffee Party. We put them together, and in the 11th hour,
they normally don't mix. But Rodney found a way.
And Boehner came around, and in the 11th hour, they passed the Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act, and it was the most bipartisan supported piece of legislation of its time, because there was so much polarization. So and now here we are, right?
Yeah.
And
pendulum swings the other direction.
And we finally got a little crowdfunding regulation, but it came with a cost. It's like, you all can regulate yourselves, but I'm just, you know, I'm gonna go do my thing on the side over here, and I'm gonna regulate the heck out of stable coins, which there needs to be some regulation, right? But at the same time, I'm gonna still pimp the meme system, right? And you know,
I got a lot of shit from my crypto friends when I, you know, pushed back on Trump speaking at the Bitcoin conference, and then him becoming president. I'm like, this you can't have it both ways. You can't talk about freedom and decentralization and then be happy when a guy comes to your conference, rallies against everything that you hate, but it's going to make your pocketbook go up. So and I'm not. Nate's seen me have these arguments lots of times with people.
Oh, it's hilarious.
I call it the hypocrisy, Nate. I call it the hypocrisy of mediocrity. You can only win when the rules are bent or swayed.
Right. You got to have some, guardrails and backbone, with everything. So, look, Rodney, one of the things I was going to say is you've been on the front lines of several shifting markets. When did you notice the streaming direction going away from so much of, kind of the big brands to more individualized building of the community in terms of live streaming? When did you start to notice that and kind of see that direction, kind of happening?
So I'm gonna get a little spooky, right? So, if you take business cycles and you compare them to like oceanic currents, if you went to business school, in the 80s and 90s, they were talking about a blue ocean, right? There's so much opportunity, but, there's a current in the ocean, like things are kind of cyclical because the planet is like, spinning, right? I have an evolved thesis, where, I say it's not just about blue oceans, it's about black galaxies, right? It's ever expanding opportunity. But even our galaxy and, our universe and all the other 2 trillion universes, they're like spinning and rotating, right? Mm-hmm. So that business cycle, to some is kind of like futuristic or prophetic per se, but honestly, it's just like how something starts, it would eventually start again. So the reason I have that insight was because 26 years ago when we were building, IPTV, Internet Protocol Television, before it was call streaming, building on the work that Mark Cuban had done with multicasting technology, broadcast.com, which is, how he actually became the Mark Cuban that we know. And so it's sort of like following not just that innovation curve, but sort of like that planetary cycle. And so when you see this, acceleration of people using the free tools, primarily starting in the pandemic, it's like, hey, I can just stream, live for free. And then then the rules start to change, right? Because it's free because you're paying no hosting, no bandwidth. It's just super free. But, if you read the fine print, you're literally saying, take my intellectual property. Some people spend, a nominal cost on developing content. We use our relationships and we jump on StreamYard, right? And then we multicast it from there. But there's some people that are like spending millions of dollars to produce content, and you're just gonna put it on YouTube. And so now you're like giving your intellectual property away to YouTube and Facebook. They're keeping the lion's share of the advertising, and you keep none of the data. You don't know where these people are. You don't know who they are because YouTube knows who the account holder is. You can make up a name, but your email is your email. And that email is tied to an IP address. So they get all of the analytical data, which they're able to become, super gazillionaires and now become, a technocracy and technology oligarchs. I mean, don't let me go down the rabbit hole. America's always had oligarchs, but when did our technology, oligarchs like want to be seen on the main stage at inauguration? I'm just gonna put a pin in that piece. Yeah. Right well, there, right?
Americans decided free shipping. Free shipping is all it takes. Is all it takes to give you everything.
There you go. So back to your point, Nate. We started to feel the tension and just the frustration of people saying, wait, I uploaded a video to YouTube and now, it's serving up all types of other advertisements that have nothing to do with the context of, the context of, what I'm selling or what I'm talking about it. So you have this distraction ecosystem. And then Facebook back in February basically said, boom, look, all live videos deprecated in 30 days. You can't have them anymore. You're going to have them on for 30 days live, and that's it. So now you can't use Facebook as your free storage anymore. Right. And so my wife and I, saw it coming in 2020, and we were able to negotiate a reacquisition of the Piksel assets. And so today we own Piksel Americas, Piksel France, Streaming Fave. We're building out Blue Piksel, and all of that is under the Piksel Technology Corporation brand. And get this, in about 60 days, man, we'll have to come and do this again. We're about to drop a Reg CF for the company.
Oh, nice. Yes. So we got to do it. So that means a regulation crowdfunding raise. So they're going to raise money. Do you know which platform you're going to do it on, or are you doing it on?
We're going to do it with Darren, man. We're going to do it with Issuance. Okay. So we're going to platform it ourselves on our own website. I don't want to be looped in with all, the other folks. Let me talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
When did equity crowdfunding portals become VCs and start
when they weren't making money and they had to find a way to make money a different way, right?
What happened to just loading up everybody, letting them, raise what they can raise, all this test the water stuff. That's not democratization, that's gatekeeping. And so I didn't want to participate.
I didn't like that either. What the way, I remember there was from the pre-equity crowdfunding stuff, there was always there before that, there was Kickstarter and there's Indiegogo. I always liked Indiegogo better because they just let everyone do their thing. As long as it was illegal, they allowed them to do it, right? Yeah. Which meant there was some things that I would have maybe kept off at the time because there were some things that were crossing the line, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
But from an ethical standpoint, but I think that once if you pass that, right, that's the way to do it.
Don't get me wrong. I think you still got to have your security stocks in line. You still got to have your accounting framework. I'm okay with the single, audit for the 1 year audit for $1 million, 2 for 5. Absolutely. But if you can overcome that barrier, which has really been democratized, whether it's CrowdCheck or Raise Papers, they really figured that piece out. If you can get beyond that hurdle, you should be able to raise, and so
I'm the thing that bothers me a lot about it is the limits that exist are, to me, I think that's unfair, right? So I don't, as an American, if I want to be as irresponsible as I want to be when it comes to the car I drive or the house I buy or anything like that, it's encouraged.
Right.
But if I want to invest more than $1,200 in a startup in a year or whatever the number is now, that's not legal. And the fact is, it's not even on me to regulate myself. I can get the company in trouble if I screw up financially. That's not, in my opinion, okay. And I think that, and the audits and things you said, I think when it goes to the higher levels of crowdfunding, when you go the raise more, it's a little too much, right? Because sometimes it's really expensive to do those things.
It is.
And then that hurts the company. But we now live in a day and age, even more so than we did 13 years ago, where a lot of the accounting stuff is automated, and you should be able to do those audits really cheap with things like QuickBooks and stuff. So
absolutely, it'll spit out, but if you got trash in, it'll give you trash out. So you still gotta have it. It's not like Febreze, just spray it on.
But that's exciting. So in about 60 days, you guys are going to be doing that for Piksel.
Yeah,
Piksel Technology Corp.
Piksel Technology Corporation, or Piksel.tech. So yeah, we're gonna do it in phases. We're gonna raise $1 million first, and then come back and do $4 million. But And that's the thing, I can openly solicit, right? So
yeah,
it's
that's
I could actually talk about the round a little bit, but
for people that don't realize, if Rodney said what he just said on the internet 10 years ago, I know streaming wasn't what it was, and we could go back there, but if he said that out loud in 2012, before the rules and laws for the Jobs Act were enforced, right, which took a couple of years after Obama
SEC violation.
Yeah, you just had an SEC violation. Not only was it, you weren't just breaking the law, it was like breaking federal law. Like if a bank didn't like you and pressed a politician, that's like jail time kind of breaking the law. Like it doesn't make sense that's the thing I was talking about, the American dream. I had no idea back in the day when I started my company, it was called Invested In, that it was even illegal to raise money on the internet. I worked at MySpace and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could just post on MySpace, my small business needs a loan, and our friends and family would get together and back me, and I'd start my small business. And I remember friends, the lawyers, people that knew the law came to me immediately, like, "What are you doing? This is crazy. You're breaking the law." And I was like, so then I had to research it for the first time, right? Nobody taught us, one, that it was against the law, but also it was a new world, right? Like,
but what's crazy is like literally lawyers would walk you through, like how to get around non-solicitation, like have a call. Add them to your email list. Have a blog, and then
you could say like, we're not, like, I remember the first easy workaround, like the easiest workaround was you'd create like a profile on something like AngelList, and you would say, "Oh, check out my company on AngelList." And if you weren't signed up as an investor, it would say on the bottom, it would say something like, "This company may or may not be fundraising at the moment." But why the heck would I be sending you to my profile on an investment website if I wasn't fundraising? But I never said it out loud, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like it was so stupid. And these things don't help companies. They don't help Americans. And talk about jobs, right? Like one of the things we used to say a lot, and it's still true to this day, is the greatest creator of jobs in this country is startups and small businesses.
That's right.
Yep.
So
all new jobs.
Net new jobs. Yes.
Today come from startups and small business, and they're continuing to trend upwards. Of course, government is deprecating jobs. Corporations are deprecating jobs. Universities are deprecating jobs.
Right.
It's startups and small businesses that are continuously creating jobs.
And it's the crazy thing about it is what these politicians say out loud on both sides, right? Are that they want to help the people and they're doing these things to help the people. And then, they vote the way they vote and they do the things they do. And you go, well, that doesn't really make sense. That's not.
I want you to elect me. And as a consequence of you electing me, I may get around to helping you.
Yeah. Well,
I definitely cannot get around to helping you.
Yes. And by the way, I'm going to say all the things you want me to say out loud before I get elected. And then once I'm elected, my hands are tied. I'm trying my best. Right.
Right. I think
cycle after cycle after cycle.
We need civics class. We got to understand that. Well, I mean, I don't know if Congress is operating like a Congress anymore, but Congress makes the laws, the president signs and or vetoes the laws. Governing through executive orders is not a legal mechanism by which you can govern. It is a signal, but most people think, oh, I looked at the president, why isn't the president doing this? And then it's like, I don't even do that. That's your state, that's your city. And so I just think, and right now we need, people need civics lessons just like they need to, they need to read that just like they need to read stablecoin white papers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Rodney, one of the things I was going to say you brought up earlier too was the high growth companies, right? My question though is like for people that kind of don't understand the difference really between the high growth operating companies and then also, startups that are just starting. For the high growth companies, what's some of the basic like frameworks that you see there that really propel them to have success or, to start to scale or be attractive to outside investors?
Absolutely. I'm going to answer the question. We just released a new course called High Growth Company Building, and
awesome.
I can get it to you all.
Are you reading these notes, Nate, or did that just align? Yeah,
Nice.
Just aligned.
Planetary alignment, man.
That's right.
And so I'll get you the link if you want to get it out to to the ecosystem, and we ought to come up with a discount. It's not an inexpensive course, but I'd rather 1 million people get it than 1,000 people get it. So we'll figure that out. I can come up with a steep discount, for the DGP world. But basically, how you start is how you finish. And the starting governance, of a high growth company is very important. Like if you expect to actually raise any type of private equity, any type of venture capital, alternative capital, Reg CF, Reg A plus, all of the acronyms for private capital, Reg D, all the stuff your securities lawyer, you'll pay them tens of thousands of dollars to tell you. You do that because you then offer a limited liability to your investors. If I invest into your LLC today, I'm now a partner in the LLC and I'm subject to all of the liability. And you don't want your investors to do that. So smart, experienced investors will not invest in LLC. So it starts with governance. It starts with like your bylaws. And this is just on the governance side. But, ultimately, when you're thinking about a high growth company, you're thinking about a company that can grow very, very, very big with a small team and can produce monthly and or annual recurring revenue. I always, talk about Instagram got acquired for $1 billion, 14 employees in a garage, right? And you might be 2 folks, you might be 5, you might be 10, but ultimately, and you may get to 100 if required. But to really scale, and most high growth companies are product based, right? They're not service based. Now you have some large service based, big brands like big companies, big consulting companies, but it took them 100 years to scale. High growth companies are scaling. We used to say 3 years, and then it became 5, and then it became 7. Now, then you had the COVID years that slowed everything down. And now, this political regime, folks are like, I'm a little bit more conservative on my cash flow, those type of things, because I don't really know what's next or what have you. And so they're saying now, like, if you're not going to dedicate a chapter, like a generation of 20 years, right? 20 years is a generation. If you're not going to dedicate a generation of your life to something, to solve it, then you probably won't solve it. And what I mean by solving it is just not solving the problem, but getting the person and or the entity that is impacted by the problem to pay you over and over and over and over again. And so when we mean high growth, that's what we mean by high growth versus a small business. Oh, I just want to get my small business to 1 or 2 million a year versus, I want to have, I don't know, 60% year over year growth. I know I'm extreming it a little bit, but my point is I want to 1 million 1 year, and I'm going to get 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, get to 20, 30 million and then sell it at 10, 15x, right? That's what we mean by high growth. And so having a high growth mindset is also important as well. Because if you think small, you will be small. If you think bigger, you'll be bigger.
But that's part of that same argument when you were talking about you can't teach the drive, right?
Right.
There are certain people who are totally comfortable with, even, everyone has their moments of impatience, but when you're early stage startup, right? Even best scenario, it takes 8-10 years to get to that moment. Yeah, there's the weird outlying cases where in 2 years they sold a company for $1 billion. But 99.9% of the time, the biggest, most successful companies you've heard of takes 10 years to get there, right? So the same way that the person has to have that grit and drive to want to be a startup founder, you also have to have a problem that you're so passionate about that 10 years from now, you're still going to be passionate about solving that problem or fighting that opportunity. But one thing I do want to throw out is we do fall into this trap a little bit of we're all in startup land, we're all in VC investment land, and we want to invest in these companies that could become billion-dollar companies. But I grew up in a house with entrepreneurs. You grew up in a house with entrepreneurs. I don't know if any of those entrepreneurs ever sold their company for $1 billion. Probably not. My dad had an auto parts shop, but you know what? 3 boys went to college. My mom was a teacher, and we lived a good life, and it got better and better. And now we have these opportunities. And one of my brothers is a financial advisor, does the normal thing that a normal person does. And 2 of us decided to roller coaster startup lifestyle. Right.
Well, you got to level set, right? You got to level set, build at the level of your purpose.
Yeah.
You know, and for some, they feel like their purpose is like galactic, and some, you know, it's okay, right? It's
the
where
beauty
you
of internet too. I used to do this. I'm sorry to interrupt, and I want you to go.
That's our style. Yeah, that's our style.
Yeah, it's my style to interrupt. I'm sorry, but where I was just gonna say really quickly is that when the internet came, when I was working at MySpace and stuff, I remember one of the things I would tell people is that it truly felt like you could finally do that dream that people talked about of like, do what you want to do. Everybody used to say, oh, you know, do what you're passionate about. But what I'm passionate about might be playing the trumpet in a jazz band, and I'll probably, you know, live a almost destitute lifestyle doing that for a living, right? If that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, I might be happy in the moment, but I, you know, probably not going to be one of the top 3 people in the world and make enough money to live, right? But when the internet came and when social media came, I could be that punk rocker in Thousand Oaks, California, and I could find the 10 punk rockers in each city across the world, where before I'd have to travel to them, I'd have to find them, and it was impossible to live that lifestyle. But I remember at the time I was in a punk band, right? And we had fans in the Philippines on MySpace. And that was actually one of our biggest groups of fans. Like, how the heck did kids from Thousand Oaks, California find fans in the Philippines, right? It's impossible. But where I'm getting at is then things like Etsy came up, and somebody could decide they're going to knit sweaters for a living, and they really would do it for a living, and they'd find the people all around the world who love their kind of knit sweaters, right? And so there's 2 things there. You might have ambition, that galactic ambition, because you have this problem that can absorb the galaxies, right?
Right.
You might just be really passionate about making wooden stands for laptops that fit together like this, and you in your wood shop at home could earn the kind of living that you never could have dreamt about before without, you know, getting a job at a bank or doing something you hated.
Yeah,
right?
It's a democratization of the little things that matter, you know. And I think one of the rules to also building anything, high growth or not, is first to find your tribe and find your community. Right? Find the people who have mastered and or are mastering the skills, you know, that require you to be able to sustain yourself, you know, at the level. Now, you know, you got to look at the backdrop of society. We are now facing, you know, deprecation of traditional workforce, acceleration of AI. You know, you've heard me talk about this world of the haves and have-nevers, right? People who will never have opportunities, whereas right now we have a few who did not have and then go on to have. And so what do the people, you know, what's the hobby to a person who cannot survive? You know, what's a side hustle to the person that has no job, right? And so I think we have to think on all different levels, you know, again, you know, maybe this galactic thinking, I'm trying to solve the problems of the planet, you know, while also maintaining, you know, the stability.
My stupid joke on Twitter, by the way, when people talk about crypto communities and things like that, I always say the Galactic Federation is not priced in. But we do say in crypto, right? There is no crypto without community. I think that there is no anything without community. And that's for any startup, any kind of ecosystem, any person. And we are hitting a crisis. I saw something today. Actually, I saw it because Mark Cuban said something on it on Twitter, and it popped up in my feed. I never told the Cuban story. I derailed us to a different direction. But yes, Coop. Punk Ape Strong and Coop have to make a song together soon. Punk Ape Strong is my alter ego silly account that I post songs on and
yeah.
So where I was going to get at quickly is Zuda, we're gonna be ending in a minute, so I see you hopping in backstage. We're gonna keep it to this crew today, but I'll talk to you after. So where I was just going to get at when I was talking about community, now I totally derailed because I saw Coop's message, was that everybody has their group and their people, and you will have to find it. And we're finding it's going to be harder in some ways because of AI, because of these things. I saw today the thing that Mark Cuban posted on was I think it's a short-term thing. I think it's going to change in the long term. But right now, people who are college graduates have the highest unemployment rate of any category.
Yeah,
that's bigger than people who aren't college graduates. Right. So that's a crazy thing. Is it's in a lot of people's eyes, your education is working against you. And I think that's because.
Yeah. Well, see, just to hop in here, I've throughout my career, I've like hopped into academia, hopped out, and so. I was a professor of entrepreneurship at Morehouse, and then I was a distinguished visiting professor at the University of North Carolina, Keenan Fagler B School at Duke University. So, like these 2-year stints, and I would come in with sort of like these disruptive curriculum and certificate programs. And it's like, in talking to my colleagues, undergraduate institutions are teaching 10 to 20 years backwards. And so, you can't even catch up to now. And so the students that are, graduating now, the only thing they're really prepared to do is to go to grad school, And so if you want to kind of like course correct, I talked to a few college presidents, particularly at, our nation's historically Black colleges and universities. And I'm saying you got to have academia and you got to have skills, and trades. You've got to teach software development alongside computer science. You've got to teach AI development, along some other technical academic path. It's sort of, and if I talk about the context of my community, it's sort of like the Booker T. Washington and W.B.E. Du Bois debate going back to the early 1900s, when there were, millions of newly, free, formerly enslaved people. And the question was, do we get skills or do we get educated? And that was a huge debate. And now that debate is facing every American.
I think there has to be a marriage of the two. Remember at CLU, so where Nate went, I'm on the board of the entrepreneurship school, I think. I don't even know what the board is exactly. Mike told me to join the board, and I'm embarrassed to not know the exact terminology, but it's the John Dorfman School of Entrepreneurship. Right? Okay. And we had me and one of the other board members talked about building with AI. And I talked about our live stream and how we did that one AI live stream where in the hour that we were hanging out, we built something, right? And Rodney, those startup weekends we used to participate in and be a part of, right? Took the whole weekend to come up with a pitch deck and do a thing. We could do a 1 hour vibe coding, whatever cool term we want to use. We could do that in less than an hour now, right? With the help of some AI and our experience, of course. But like, absolutely, kids are graduating school not knowing how to utilize some of those superpowers. And so we were talking about, could we do a 1 day thing, or could one of the guys actually talked about teaching a class where it's all about utilizing that technology because they're a liberal arts school, right? The kids graduate. Do you need that same design skills? Do you need the same
you just gave me a thought, man. We might have to relaunch we used to do a thing called 1 day startup, I keep my day job?
I want to do a live stream. We've talked about this a lot called 1 hour startup, where 1 hour a week we hang out, and that's the only hour we work on a startup together that week, right? It's just 1 hour startup.
That would be cool.
But one day would
be
Nate,
cool. Jump in. I know you had something.
I know. Sorry, I keep interrupting. Go.
You're good. I'm been around the lawn now, 9 years, so I got it down now. What I was gonna say is, I think one of the beauty of startups is you learn experience, right? You learn the experience, you start to develop the skills. You don't master the skills right away. You start to develop the skills, but you also start to get access to people who have the skills, right? And I think one of the things with, people who are graduating right now, especially the undergrads, is they don't necessarily have those skills yet, but also that's where startups really come into play in small businesses. That venture and that avenue allows you to get involved and propel yourself at a otherwise quicker rate than if you go ahead and go a traditional way. Right. And, one of the things I was going to say is we've kind of already been talking about it, but with where we're currently at, I know we're talking about the undergraduate side of it. What do you think about so much on the startup ecosystem and small businesses with where we're going and where we're going right now? Because, Alon kind of alluded to it with the undergrads a little bit, and we're kind of already starting to see a little bit of this stuff. But just in terms of the grand scheme of the startup ecosystem, like Alon and I were talking about recently, you don't hear as much as the startup weekends, the hackathons, the small mixers that you used to hear about before. Whereas before COVID, that was a backbone, right? No matter, you heard of stuff in different states where you would be like, oh man, I have friends going to this mixer, this event in a different state. Whereas now it's kind of gone back to the big conferences. And then other than that, everything else is really, really private, So just curious to see.
I put my ecosystem hat on for a second, and we're definitely seeing a consolidation of ecosystem startup support resources or technology support resources. You've got, consolidation of the Techstars footprint. The corporate accelerator is shrinking. The underfunded, underestimated organizations, the scrappy ones like OHub and Opportunity Hub, are scraping, man, to keep going. That's why we're going online and really saying, let's build community and let's productize the content. Because I think, the nice to have programs are going away. The nice to have startups are going away. It's either, a nice to have or a got to have. And so, people want to fund got to have, planet in peril, economic systems.
And at that point, it's a little too late, right?
Yeah.
And I will say, right, I think that there's lots of people who cheer all this government funding, stopping funding, all of these useless things in their eyes, right? But one, your useless thing is not necessarily someone else's useless thing.
Right.
And then two, there is long-term thinking. And I will say, I think the government is one of the most horrible managers of money of anyone. But them giving money to the one category that creates net new jobs in our country is not them wasting money. If they put more money in people like Rodney's hands, we'd be living in a utopia 10 years from now. But if they take it away, right? Like there's that in my, and this is me personally, right? Because obviously I'm a nerd for the startup ecosystems and I think it's so important for small businesses in our country. But I think there's that. And then there's the open space stuff like national parks and things like that. I think like protect our resources and create new opportunity, right? Because there's not just, and I'll go back to let's be selfish for a moment and think about money, not just from a okay, cool, yeah, we're getting to the end of the stream. I got a little alert, so I should keep it tight so we don't keep Rodney for forever. But just all I was going to say is we want to create jobs in our communities. It will make all of our lives better across the board if our friends and family have purpose and have a job. And this is the way you create new jobs. But also, if we go back to why Rodney and I both got into crowdfunding, right? The only way to create generational wealth and to leapfrog the current systems that we all grew up with is to be able to have access to these opportunities, right? The only people making generational wealth are the people who can afford to invest in certain funds that have sometimes $500,000, $1 million minimum investments that get access to these startups. That's why what Rodney's doing with Reg CF is so important too. Think about the people who had made money from Facebook being Facebook were the people who could invest in funds like Sequoia. And to be an investor in a fund like Sequoia, not only do you have to be an accredited investor, already be a millionaire, and all the BS rules and laws that apply.
They have to let you in.
They have to let you in. And to get in, you have to either be a really special person in their boys club or be some kind of genius, again, alumni of the right school, or you have to give them $1 million.
Absolutely. 3 things I know. Draper Gore blockchain does not gatekeep. OHUP does not gatekeep, and Piksel does not gatekeep.
That's right.
All right. All right.
So come hang out with us, right?
Yes. Yes. And talking about that, something that we didn't talk off the bat, and we're going to talk about on future, every future episode from here on out is, and we have some ideas for creating investor networks internally. We were trying to do that Rodney and I on our last call alluded to discussing, and we're gonna get on and help amplify everything each other does, as we always do. Piksel is going to host, and we're going to stream all of these from now on into Piksel, which means we'll have a branded page on our website that has all of our live streams. So if you're watching it, 90% of the people, I think there's about 700 people watching live right now on Twitter, right? You'll still be able to watch it on Twitter. You'll still be able to watch it on LinkedIn because that's distribution for us. But it's going to live, that content, forever, hosted on our website, powered by Piksel. And we're going to start doing more partnerships with Piksel to get more stuff out there. And so maybe we'll have some exclusive content on Piksel or things like that. Maybe we'll do that 1 hour work week idea, stream it on Piksel, because I still think, how epic would it be if we go, look, everything else going on in our lives, we're going to do that. But 1 hour a week, we just build a startup here. We use AI to help automate it. Everything, and we do it, and I think we could now, and I think it would be fun, and we'll create opportunities, and I think everyone needs to learn it from a fun perspective. I sat on a call with one of my best friends from childhood who's a firefighter now. He has an idea for a startup, and he said, "Where do I start?" And I said, "We're going to sit together, and I'm going to show you some of the AI tools that I use to streamline the process." And his mind was blown, right?
Wow.
All you need to do is sit with someone for 10 minutes and show it to them. And you just leapfrogged, all that education process that the rest of us needed weeks to figure out wireframes and share it with friends and get feedback and this and that. You could create these feedback loops with AI now and streamline it. So, but what's important to this conversation is Piksel. We're going to stream on Piksel. You can now go to, I think it's let me just double check I think DGB.Piksel Nate,
DGB.Piksel.plus.
Plus, yes.
Plus.
So it's Piksel, Piksel, and you can see that we're live right now on there, right?
Look at
and but that
live right now.
Branded page will exist on our website. So by the way, if you're a content creator, if you have a weekly show, if you have a daily show, if you're creating content, you should look into this, because they will help you on a bunch of fronts, not just the hosting and all that, but later on with monetization and everything else that you guys are doing. And I think it's important to have control over your IP, right? Like Rodney said at the beginning, you're creating all of this value for Google and Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. For us, we're here for the startup community. We're here to meet the startups and the investors, and that's our value. But if you're creating content, streaming games, streaming crypto advice, streaming faith, streaming anything that you're streaming,
absolutely,
they can help you find your community and grow that community and monetize that community in a fair way. And I think that's really, really important.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Of course. Any last things that we didn't hit? Coop, I promise you, I think I'll start next week by telling the Rodney Sampson story with how I got to meet Mark Cuban and all that. So I don't make us go another 20 minutes over today.
Kingonomics. We'll just plant the seed. Go read Kingonomics, and then you can tell them about it next week.
Get that book. I think I've bought probably 20 copies of that book over the years. It's one of my favorite. I love that book because, just as a quick thing, forget it. We're going over a few more minutes. Rodney wrote a book called Kingonomics. And basically what it does is it applies Martin Luther King's speeches, his philosophies to economic models, right? It's kind of takes it to the next step. And it's a really great book I just think it's a great, important book because all of us grew up at school, even those of us who Southern California kids at a school that had 2 black kids at the whole school. We heard the I Had a Dream speech. We know who Martin Luther King is. We looked up to him as an idol growing up, but we didn't understand and know the depths of how he felt about economics, right? Or how Rodney applied those philosophies and teachings to economics. And I thought it was important. And Rodney, on the 50 Years March of Washington, released that book and had a whole conference. And that's what I'll do to tease next week's episode. But get that book. I think it's an important book. If you haven't read it digitally or whatever, any of the crew who comes on our regular shows, Zuda, Coop, text me. I'll buy it for you on Amazon, so you can read it if you want to read parts of it, or at least get the intro to it before next week, so we could talk about it for a little bit. And I think we're going to also talk to Turf next week. They have some cool stuff. Oh, I have a cool idea. Okay, I'm not going to tease what Turf is going to announce. They're going to announce something really cool. I think that I could take the text from Kingonomics and use that as a demo with their product. We'll see. I'll text Rodney about it. We'll see. It'll be a fun experiment, but Zuda's excited too about diving into Piksel. So,
Rodney, I was going to say one last thing to kind of cap it off and finish it up, because I know Alon will keep going with you for another 15, 20 minutes. I
didn't even get to. He has really cool Adidas shoes. I was jealous of last time we hung out. I always wear my Sambas. He had like Gucci Sambas. Like, are you wearing them right now? I see you looking down.
No.
I literally wrote it down and go, do I go this far of a diversion? Okay, go, Nate.
No, see, this is the whole point. So, Rodney, finish it off. Give one last bit of advice to upcoming startups right now, just to kind of put a cap on everything.
Don't build alone. And I'm not just, talking about being a solo founder and not having a co-founder, but like get your kids on board, get your partner, your spouse on board. Because you're going to be going through the hills and the valleys, the mountains and the valleys, and you got to have them on your side. You don't want to create bitterness, by always, focusing on something else. You got to have them on your team. And that's a very, very important piece of experiential wisdom, is to make sure that you build a team of your inner circle that can support you through the process.
Love it. That's great.
I love that. You're right. People who didn't grow up with entrepreneurship in their household, it's a really foreign concept. It's really hard. Coop just asked about sharing the OHub link. So I'm going to say, make sure I put the @Rodney Sampson below Rodney's name, so you can follow him on Twitter and all X and all that, but follow him on LinkedIn. He shares there. But what are those?
Go download the OHub. Download the OHub app, just OHUB.
I got it up on my phone right now.
There you go.
Download
OHUB. iPhone, just OHUB on iPhone or Android.
Perfect. And I think I'm gonna look into that. I think next week is gonna end up being Kingonomics Rodney talk ×2, at least for the first half, because you just sparked that in my head when I thought, it'd be cool to get Zuda and Coop, who kind of join us from the community, to read Kingonomics and have some thoughts and start with that. Nate, I don't know, have you read Kingonomics yet either? I gotta get you a copy too. And we'll talk about it. But Turf is demoing something next week with knowledge bases and things like that. And what if we use Kingonomics as a knowledge base? I don't want to tease too much of what they're doing because I don't know if they want to announce it or not. So
drop the link. I might join. You never know.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. Let's see, because it'll be cool to see the biases that exist inherently in some AI tools. I'm going to say that, and I wonder what happens. It would be interesting. So guys, thank you so much, Rodney, for taking the time. We obviously need to do it more often. But it sounds like in 60 days for sure, we're going to have you back either right before it or right when it goes live, when you do your crowdfunding. And I'm really excited for that. So thank you again for your time, Rodney. Thanks everyone for joining. See you all next week.
All right. Peace.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.